His recommendation of 3 will crest a million.
No, it will get to just $1 million.
No,
At 600,000, this is a conversation we've had, actually I've had, at 600,000,
Yeah.
you know,
No, it's closer to 7.
yeah, whatever. At that level, at twice, you know, that really does not make public financing attractive at all.
They don't know how to run a campaign. Seriously.
And, but at $1 million, well,
$1 million's not bad, you know, in a city like Albuquerque.
well, that's what I'm saying. That's why, actually, this is something that I thought about and talked about, that this might make public financing for the mayor something that might be available to candidates and make it attractive for them. But again, I don't think many are going to elect to go this direction.
Because you've seen budgets 1.5, or heard of budgets 1.5 million.
That's what everybody's
Maybe you
looking.
could get me copies of them, and I can help them make adjustments.
Well, I think
See where they're spending.
I think there's, you know, $1.5 million, there's 100,000 for operation of the campaign and 1.4 million for TV.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it would be good to have an immediate backup answer to, okay, if we do something like that, now let's talk about the nuts and bolts. Can we afford it? Can we afford it under the current type of money collected?
Yeah, I don't know that we can afford anything that we're doing, but, because I don't know where the fund's at now. Lindsay, could you have John Zaman get a report to us on the fund and the status of the fund at the next meeting?
Yeah, you just want to look at what the balance was at the end of the last election payouts. Was it enough to sustain, triple it? That would be the quickest way to look at it.
Yeah, I'll take a quick look. I actually have it on my computer.
Because then they'll know, did they have enough to go to 3 times as much?
Right.
If they have.
All right,
It's gonna depend on-
so we have 2 items to discuss next time. Do I hear a third? If not, I'll put a third out,
I have an issue here, like Bruce.
okay?
There have been some concerns raised about the ethics committee and the board that actually makes decisions and reviews both election matters and ethical issues. I don't have a proposal, but the concern has been that too many cases are dismissed administratively without going through the full process. Rather than going through the ordinances themselves and seeing how it works, what I would like to see are copies of the actual decisions that have been reached probably over the last 8 years. I can't imagine there's been very many ethics complaints, but the complaints that come in, how they've been dismissed, so we get an idea which ones are being dismissed administratively without a full review. I don't know how many cases that would really be, but I don't think it's a lot. Just to see if there really is a problem, if we could get those.
And I've got a specific proposal
Okay.
that I want to put up, but I was going to wait until we got through open and ethical elections in the election code.
Why are you asking for additional minutes?
No, on open and ethical elections.
So we can get back to this one.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's
we're
a
going to
great
come
one.
back, because I've got another angle that's on the same idea. The only other one that I'm going to put on then is changing the start date to an earlier date. I'll just put it at this earlier start date. So we're going to discuss 3 things next time and nothing else. Is that the consensus we've got here? Speak now or forever hold your peace.
Early start date, what do you mean, sir? Isn't there going to be a
When-
later start date?
Let me, Common Cause proposed a start date of January 1st. We amended it to a start date of April 1st, as I recall.
Yes.
There's been a concern that that's too long, so I'm going to suggest the start date of May 1st.
How many days?
Actually, are you, I'm sorry,
How many days would that come to?
That would come to 6 weeks, about that.
for whom? The mayor or the council candidates?
It is the, well, it could be different. I
Yeah.
think that there's a rational basis for having a different standard for,
Right now, it's 6 weeks for mayor and 4 weeks for council. And what we had worked on, Steve and myself, and it went this was not cast in stone because Steve wanted to go much earlier for good reason. We expanded it to 2 months actually, we expanded it too much. But the revision of the too much was to, in a more reasonable approach, in response to the council's last concern, was 8 weeks for mayor. Because you're losing mayoral candidates left and right.
Right.
And 6 weeks for council, because we had 8 weeks and 3 months.
Right.
That was too much.
Good. I think we'll have a consensus on that. So we've got 3 items now. Any other items? Okay. Closed. Bidding's closed. 3 items wins. All right, now let's go to the election code, and I'm considering our item, because I've got another.
Yes.
Talk to somebody.
Are we discussing any of this here?
I don't think there's any other specific things in here, are there?
Yes,
On
there
the
are.
public financing, it just really addresses.
Oh, on the
wording
public
stuff.
finance.
Right.
Okay,
Yeah.
we haven't got to the election code.
Right, we're going to the election code now. All right. Now we're going to the election code. Heather, why don't you present what your conversations with the councilors has revealed?
Most of the counselors, number one, they would like to change the terms Measure Finance Committee to Political Action Committee and try to make some consistent language.
Okay, so there we don't have to do anything, we did that already. Okay,
Okay, so, did that already pass through there?
Yes.
You know that?
did
We
we,
have a draft.
Political
Yeah.
advocacy committee.
political advocacy?
So it should be.
Is that what we did?
We
Yeah,
call political
advocacy. It's still
Okay.
called PAC, but it's.
Look, that's something they can do.
Yeah.
They can
Okay.
do.
Okay. So it was, I actually started back at the beginning, because I didn't know if we were doing, basing it off of what we already sent out or where we were at. But
No, what
essentially
we've,
it's
concerns they've got with what we presented to them. They asked us to go back, and when they asked us to go back, they didn't tell us anything to look at. So that's why I asked members of the committee and you all to go talk to the councilors, rather than me being Criswell. Remember Criswell?
Yeah.
Criswell.
No, not Criswell.
Pardon?
Karnak.
Karnak, you're right, Karnak.
Criswell was a real guy.
Criswell is a real, it's Karnak, see, I'm getting old.
What's an example of someone getting too old and not remembering things?
Bob White, Mr. Chairman. All right. So those things that we've got that are different, or concerns that they have that are with regard to the proposal that we made to them. Has anybody heard any concerns about the proposal that we made to them? The things that I've gotten, and a little bit of outreach that I've made, are concerns. They're more understanding what it's all about issues, and not specific concerns like they had with open and ethical elections.
I completely agree with that. I think one of the issues that I've heard come up is that, number one, they really don't have their arms entirely around what the disclosure issues are. They want to restore the constitutionality of it, of course. And then secondarily from that, I think the only thing that I've heard since the elections have happened is to have the definitions really tightened up.
Yeah.
And this dovetails right into the ethics board
Yeah.
on ordination.
Okay, and so we'll go back to that. The one thing, me doing the close here again on this one, the only thing I've heard is some concerns about I think we used $1,000, whether that was too low. We had bumped it up from $250 to $1,000.
Oh, to do political activity.
Right, for the Sierra clubs or this club or that club. So there were some people who thought that might be too low, and maybe it should be $2,500. So I'm just going to put that down for discussion purposes.
And if I may, just to let everyone here know, the disclosure requirements for that in the city of Santa Fe right now is 0. If you spend 1 penny, you have to report and disclose.
I-
That's every cup of coffee, every
Isn't
time you
that
go there.
I'd
Or
find,
clerk is ready to cry.
I would find that unconstitutional.
Clerk is ready to just cry.
But that's why they did it. They
There
wanted
are
a
two
different.
extremes going on here, just so you know.
I would find that. All right, now let's go to the code of ethics. Bruce, why don't you,
Whoa. Are we gonna discuss any of this?
no, tonight, to reiterate, what we're doing tonight, we're limiting our agenda for the 19th. Okay? What we announced last meeting was bring tonight the issues that we're going to address in the open and ethical election and election code. We are going to come up with a list, and we are then discuss and make recommendations on the list on the 19th.
And so the only thing on the election code so far is that 1K versus 2,500.
Yeah, and that is it.
Why?
We're closing.
There's an important elephant in the room on this election code, and that is the reportability of third-party groups. How are we gonna come up with the solution for that?
I'm
The
missing-
third-party groups who come from outside, who want to spend money here, are now spending up, with impunity. The question is, the whole purpose of Common Cause's, the thrust of Common Cause's concern on this particular article was disclosability.
We've made a recommendation on that. We made a recommendation to them in June, or in May. Is there anything different than what we said to them in May?
I'm trying to remember them all, Bob, I'm sorry.
And actually, I'm limiting it even further. This got sent back to us because the counselors had concerns. They didn't express what those concerns were. What we're doing now is we're trying to fish out what those concerns are, and we're going to make a list, which we're doing here now. And then we're going to discuss those things and take a position on those things on the 19th.
All right, to giving it the best shot, then I would imagine that a concern of the reporting of third-party outside groups is that I believe there was a dollar amount that if it was spent, the outside group would not only have to report who contributed, if they spent over a certain amount, they'd have to report all contributors who have given over that amount in their whole organization. Am I right,
No,
Steve?
no, just in the city election.
No, that's not what we voted on that night, I don't think.
I thought it was sorry, but I thought it was of a more narrow focus on that, where it was, number one, you gotta determine the primary purpose of that organization.
Yeah.
And then from that, I thought it was, and I can't remember, it's in our state committee, the top 3 donors of that organization. And it's only in specifics to the ads that they took out, but not
But it's-
reporting on the whole organization.
Not the whole organization, just the money spent on the local campaign.
Draft changes are based on reporting requirements of federal McCain-Feingold law that was upheld by the U.S. Supreme Court in 2003 in McConnell v. FEC and in 2010 in Citizens
All right,
United.
I'm gonna put down this issue, that we will look at what the reporting requirement is. My recollection is that we said outside groups, not specifically formed for this election, if you spend more than $1,000 in the city election, you have to report your contributors towards that.
Well, what if they're from Minnesota? You know?
If they're from Minnesota and they gave $1,000 in favor of Doug Anton for
Yeah.
city council,
Uh-huh.
that has to be reported.
Exactly, but who in Minnesota? What if 100,000 gave money? Don't you see where the problem comes up?
I think, if I can recall what I think the scheme was, correct me if I'm wrong, is the organization had 2 choices. They could either spend out of a segregated fund that was specifically for
Yeah.
the election. That was alternative one. Alternative two is if they don't want to do that, then they have to reveal all of their donors over a certain threshold.
That's right, all of their donors, even if they spend $1,100.
All right, I'm putting this on the agenda to discuss. If there's specific recommendations on changes to what we've already recommended, we'll talk about those. If we don't have specific recommendations, like change it from $1,000 to $2,500, then we're not going to do a philosophical discussion about it because we did that in May. So if there are specific recommendations on that, I'm going to call it the reporting requirement, or the
Portability.
reportability,
Yeah.
okay? All right, that's all.
That's what I'm just trying to
All right, anything else before we move on to ethics? And I was going to bring this up as we moved into C here, but go ahead. Why don't you kind of talk about what you're talking about, and then I can talk a little bit about what I'm thinking about.
Just a concern raised that there are too many cases that are filed with the ethics board that are dismissed administratively, or they're dismissed for lack of jurisdiction, and there's no real conclusion that's given to the public or to people who are complaining about what the real reason is behind what happened. I don't know if that's true or not, that's the perception out there. All I'm asking for is not to, I don't want to sit there and read the code and see what's required. I want to see the practicalities of what's happened over the last number of complaints that have been filed. If we could look at, I think if you had 8 years of complaints, you might have 10 or 15 complaints. There's just not that many filed. But if we have all of the complaints filed with the ethics board, whether it came out of elections or whether it came out of ethics, all of the complaints filed and the resolution of those. And there should be, I would think there would be a decision of some kind, or else some kind of administrative statement about what happened in each of those cases.
There is a report, yeah.
So,
Well,
so we would,
it's a
I would like to
statement.
know, I'd just like to know if there really is a problem with too many cases are being dismissed because, wait a second, this was a complaint about a candidate, they're no longer a candidate, so the complaint goes away. Is that really happening? Are there cases that go away because there's a technical issue with what the form of the complaint is? Just so we know if there really is a problem with these cases aren't really being decided. And so, and I just want to see it from a practical level of what cases have been filed and what's happened with those.
Let me add kind of, because my issue is very similar, and I don't know why this didn't come to me earlier, but maybe because I tried to repress it. My last election was the 9 election, and I had much contact with the incumbent mayor and incumbent councilors, who would call me frequently and say to me, it is obvious that such and such organization is supporting my opponent. Go out there and count the cars in front of such and such headquarters, and you'll see that that's the case. And I would respond to the incumbents, and one incumbent, the councilor incumbent, thought that I was beating on him because of the mayor incumbent didn't like him, and that I would. But both of them wanted this. They wanted me, the city attorney, to go enforce the election code. The election code is structured in such a way that only private complaints can be dealt with by the Board of Ethics. And so I don't raise this, with a specific proposal, but kind of discuss the issue whether we even want to have something like the Board of Ethics now has a compliance officer for the reporting requirements. To audit their reporting requirements and make sure they comply with the ordinance. And so the question is, should there be some sort of function where, when there are issues of violations of the code, that, and I think it gets to your issue, that when they're, as well, that if they're dismissing some of these things and they're really violations, should there, in other words, be kind of a independent counsel that represents the Board of Ethics to do investigations and make suggestions? I think independent counsel would be more like special prosecutor, might be a better term, for the Board of Ethics to actually go out and seek violations and enforce them.
And that would require a charter change.
I don't know that it would. I think that it could just be so, I think they could do that by ordinance.
They have rules and regs, self-made rules and regs.
No, I think that if, to do this, the other thing,
No, but they have their own rules
yeah, I
and
know,
regulations.
I still think the council would need to do it if not more than an appropriation. Because the other thing I would tell the incumbent mayor and incumbent councilor was that I don't have anybody on my staff who can do that anyway. There would need to be an appropriation to do that sort of thing. So anyway, it's just something that I know it bugged me at the time.
Yeah.
And then I forgot about it, and then I just happened to remember it in a conversation the other day.
And then if I could have a question for you.
Sure.
I take it you're looking to gather that information to determine whether the result of that investigation would then lead to a possible charter change.
Absolutely.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, and just to strengthen it or make it clear how these things should be dealt with, if it's not there, if it's not being handled.
Yeah.
Who does dismiss administratively? Is it the Board of
I
Ethics?
don't know.
Yes.
No,
Yes, it
it's the Board of Ethics, and it's not done administratively, it's done,
But
they've
more
got that
council.
committee.
Yeah,
the, what do they call it, the
the review committee.
review committee.
And they rotate.
This year they put it on the record as a meeting.
They always put it on the record.
Right.
The review committee makes a decision, and then,
Well,
Yeah.
actually, they made a decision at the meeting. They decided to do it that way.
Good.
Yes.
oh, that's better.
Because
yeah.
there was, Nick and I, well, Nick was. the
Oh, it was,
counsel.
if that's the case, you're addressing part of
Yeah, no,
what Bruce's
it was-
concern is.
Yeah, they're just.
If
putting
we
it-
deal with this one, first, having been the recipient of those one statement, one little paragraph decisions. They're not decisions as much as finding that simply says, and by the way, you can find these almost anywhere on the opposition candidates. I'm sorry, on the candidate that it was written, that the charge was brought against. You can find the report of what the committee gave when they disposed of it on that candidate's advertising. Because they just take that sentence and say, no fault was found. And so, but they don't say what it was about or anything like this. And it's a great piece, to use for advertisements, but I'm telling you, the reality of it is, I know I have spent days putting together a complaint. I mean, just right down the law school, checkoffs, getting everything, and having it dismissed with one sentence because of things that I didn't even fully understand when they reviewed it. No lawyer reviewed it, 3 people reviewed it, and I mean, Bruce's point is critical. I don't like that review committee. How many complaints do they get that the 5 of them can't sit down and take a look at this thing?
But having a special prosecutor that person would have the ability to go investigate.
I don't know if I would recommend that though, Mr. Chairman. I cut you off, but
Yeah, I think the idea would be that those 3 people don't have the ability to go behind that complaint and do an investigation. They're relying entirely on the face of the complaint. And if on the face of the complaint it seems insufficient to them, they make a dismissal. If there were some sort of staff that could take that complaint, do an investigation, and then make a report to the board, they would have the facts.
except that there is a provision that empowers them to, small s, subpoena information and request information via their auditor or whoever before they make their full.
Right, but again, that's the board.
Um,
That's, the board has to make that decision.
not that review committee, that subcommittee of three. I
Can
don't
we get
know,
a
I'm
copy
like,
of the regulations
Yeah,
that
sure.
are adopted?
Why
This
don't-
might help us.
Yeah,
Why don't we have that for next time, and we'll,
okay,
and that may be one that we don't do next time, but we do at the first meeting in December.
this is a great subject, because that board can be misused.
Now, let me tell you the contra side. of it.
Well, you and I have worked for days on that
Oh,
stuff.
I know,
I know.
yeah. Let me tell you the experience of the county. Until a couple of years ago, the county they would have a special prosecutor on every ethics complaint.
Really?
Every single ethics complaint, they'd hire an outside investigator to go in and make an investigation, bring that investigation back to the ethics board. When they amended their code of ethics, I think in 13 or 14, they removed that and made it more like the city's board, that the complainant has to make a preliminary case.
Yeah.
And so far, they've had 3 or 4 complaints under this new system, and they've dismissed. No, there was one of them that was moot, I think involving the county treasurer, where he hadn't filed something and he subsequently filed it, and they just said it's moot. And they spanked it and said, go get training. And then there was a private complaint filed against the former sheriff, which was a full-fledged public hearing that went on for 5 hours. And they ended up dismissing that one because they felt that the case hadn't been made.
Mr. Chairman, you bifurcated the purposes when you said there is a compliance and an ethical, I believe someone said, those two functions. And the compliance, the auditor, handles that stuff, and the ethical, the board itself. But you know something, they cross.
Well, all that's done now in terms of compliance is the financial reports that are filed.
Yeah.
That's all the auditor looks at. They don't look at anything else. They don't look at any other complaint. They don't look at, or violation, or potential violation.
Like signage or printing.
Signage
Yeah.
or printing.
But if they look at the money and a complaint is filed that they did not report, failure to report or accepting over amounts, that's both. That becomes the ethical hearing based on the auditor's report, remember?
But they get that sort of thing, they get from the compliance, and it's actually then the auditor who files the complaint.
Or a report,
Right.
yes, yeah.
But the complaint is sui generis from the board, or sui sponte from the board, based upon the auditor's
Yes, they
report.
can file their own. Right now, they can file their own.
And that's what they do with the auditor.
Yeah,
All right, what we'd like to have for the next meeting is the regulations. We would like to have what Bruce requested in terms of complaints filed and disposition. And I know they were being done before, when I was still around. I don't know how much information they had. No, it was like, they had a little description of the complaint, and what the nature of the complaint was, and what the board action was.
the
as I
review
recall.
committee or the board?
The board.
Oh, yeah, they
Yeah.
file a decision.
Yeah, and then they make I think they make a report to the council too.
Maybe in their annual, but I know they have
Yeah.
penalty listed and all that stuff.
Yeah, so those are available. Yes, Ms. Martinez?
Yes, Mr. Chairman, could I ask if it's possible to get the documents seriated as they're put together? Because it's very difficult to get something, the day before or the day of and try to digest all this information. If we could get the material as it's compiled, that would be really helpful.
All right, let me just kind of go over it where I see things now. For our next meeting, we're going to do the election code and the open and ethical election stuff. And we are going to do redistricting in, our election day. What we've got for our meeting in the, on the 19th is whether or not, and, you know, I changed my mind 3 times today discussing, because I'm actually doing some work for the county. I'm the independent counsel for their board, which is complaint-driven only, and they've got a system that really works. And the other thing is having a good board that knows how to make sure that they make their decisions so that people know what they need to be able to show and prove, both in the complaint and in the hearing.
Can we see the legislation? Can we see what,
Yeah, can you get the Bernalillo County Code of Conduct ordinance?
that includes the enforcement? and
Yeah.
everything? Okay.
And there's rules and regulations they've got, and those are up on the Compliance Office website.
Thank you.
We've had, what's still out there, Mr. Buckholz's,
I made no progress on that, I'm gonna have to drop it, because, it's just something that seems like too many complexities were raised by the city attorney's office to deal with it in a charter way, and I'll continue to visit on the issue, but I'm not sure that I'm ready yet.
I'm ready to work with you outside this group, to maybe get together with
Good.
some of the counselors and see, to relook at the process again.
Yeah.
We have your IPRA enforcement issue.
I have nothing new to report from the last meeting.
Okay, I'm gonna, those are still on, I'm gonna put them on for the first meeting, and, well, I want, or you're just withdrawing yours?
I'm gonna withdraw, but I do wanna continue to work on it. I just
Yeah.
wanna withdraw from this process.
Okay, I'm gonna put yours on, just so it's on the agenda for the 19th of November?
Yeah, if there's something to report on.
Let's strike that, it'll be the first meeting in December.
December 3rd.
Yeah, December, the ethics and the IPRA,
Just update, IPRA update.
And the public comment issue.
yeah, let's just put on for discussion, because that was an issue that came up before the last Charter Review Committee.
What?
The issue of actually, I think they took it up in the way of form of government. But just a discussion of the issue that was raised in public comment, have a discussion about that.
What was it? I'm sorry.
It was an issue that, it actually had come up at the previous meeting as well. Whether there should be a formal process for the mayor to be at the city council meetings. And there was some public testimony last time and this time with regard to that. So we'll put that on for the 3rd.
Mr. Chairman, last time we discussed this issue, and I thought that the city attorney's office had told us that the mayor can be there or his representative, his or her representative.
The way the charter reads now is that the mayor or his or her representative must be there.
Well, so that's already included, is that the same issue or?
No, I think the issue is that to delete or representative.
Or augment, except that the mayor shall appear no less than one time per quarter,
Right.
or something
Right.
like that.
Well, you know, and then, you know, even in the olden days,
Olden days.
well, when I was on the city council, the mayor, and this hasn't happened, I think, in 30 years, but I can remember the mayor on April 1st would come down and actually make a budget presentation. The mayor would make a budget presentation to the council. Because the charter says the mayor shall make a presentation to the council.
Did Mr. Baca attend mayor council meetings?
I don't think that.
Sometimes he would go.
Rarely.
Yeah.
And Marty came
And
very,
then yell at
Very,
us.
it
in
happened.
my experience, there's been no mayor who has attended regularly.
Not regularly.
Not since the first year, from 74 to basically 74 to 75, 76, Harry did.
And that's before my.
Because that was he was,
Inaugural library.
well, he was the first mayor, and we had just changed from a commission form of government. He was kind of used to being up on the dais.
Right.
Then he learned he didn't have to be there, and
Steve Davenport.
but Harry and David would always go down and make their budget presentations. And I think it might have been during Harry's second term or Schultz's term that the budget presentation and State of the City address, there would be a budget presentation and State of the City address made to the council on April 1st. Yes.
I don't know a lot about municipal law, and this would seem to be a particular question to Albuquerque, but is there a concept of separation of powers at all? I mean,
Yeah.
is there a- okay.
Let me just, yeah, you weren't here last time, I kind of went over it. There are basically three models. And this is what the 2009 commission looked at, whether we should change to another model. There's what we've got, which is a strong mayor form of government, which is separation of powers. There is, it's with some elements of a commission manager form of government, where the commission hires a manager, and then hires and fires the manager. Because we've got a chief administrative officer that's actually in the charter that does the merit system ordinance, does a lot of stuff that the city manager typically would do. And then there's the weak mayor form of government, which is where the mayor sits on the council or commission and generally votes in cases of ties.
That's most of the governments in Albuquerque. The majority of cities have that.
Most cities in New Mexico have a weak
Yeah,
mayor form.
Mayor Gonzalez broke a tie
Yes.
last night on a relatively important matter, example.
Right.
And most of the governments in Albuquerque, most of the governments in New Mexico have that form where the mayor comes and does not vote except for where there's a.
Yeah, and I really don't know that we need to, I mean, that's certainly something we can discuss, but I think there was enough interest last time in at least having a cursory discussion of the issue, and because it's our only public testimony and public recommendation, I think we owe it to the public that came to us to talk to us to have a discussion. I don't consider, Heather's here at all the meetings, so we always discuss her issues.
She's an honorary member.
An honorary member.
Oh, thank you. I'll just get a little plaque on my chair.
All right. Am I leaving out any? I'm going to say those are the issues. I'll leave a fail-safe for next meeting to put something on the December 3rd meeting, but otherwise, we'll see everybody on the 9th, or is there any other matters?
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right.
Have a good birthday, Doug.
Councilor saying that you
Thank
told
you.
me you called.
I don't answer all of those.